Both Gonzaga and Kentucky are coming off tough losses. Who will rally the troops and pick up a major win on Friday in Nashville?
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Welcome into this crossover edition of the Locked On Zags and Locked On Kentucky podcast. I am your Locked On Zags host, Andy Patton. He is Lance Dawe of Locked On Kentucky, and we are here on the Locked On Podcast Network, the #1 sports podcasting network on the planet. Want to thank all of you for making the show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Of course, give a special shout out to those everyday listeners as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you will get $300 in bonus bets that you can use all across the app. So download FanDuel today. Like we said, it's a crossover episode. Talking with Lance Dawe of Locked On Kentucky here. I'm again Andy Patton, Locked On Zags, getting ready for Friday night's game at the Bridgestone Arena between Gonzaga and Kentucky. 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Pacific time. Game will be on ESPN2. What we're going to do, I'm going to talk to Lance a little bit about Kentucky, some of the injury woes, some of the struggles this team has had this year, including their recent loss to North Carolina. Going to flip the script. Lance is going to talk to me a little bit about Gonzaga, their loss to Michigan, how they have played so far this season, including a couple of wins over SEC teams already this year. And then we're going to close out the show with some predictions, some thoughts on what this series means for both programs in this game in particular. Lance, one of the big storylines for Kentucky coming into the season, besides the amount of money they spent on their roster, was the depth of this roster. It was one of the deepest teams in college basketball, 1 through 15, really, with how much talent was on that team. But with some early season injuries, we have not seen this team really come together in the way that I think a lot of people had thought or had hoped. And we're going into a game on Friday night where we're still not going to see Jayden Quaintance, the Arizona State transfer, really, really good rim protector, great low post scorer. He's been out with an injury, a knee injury, the entire season. Not going to be with Mo Dioubate, who's been out for a couple of games as well. And now it sounds like might be out for a little bit longer with a high ankle sprain. Looking at this team, especially following that North Carolina loss, I'm curious where you're at with the team that is 5-3, is regarded well in the metrics, but it's mostly because they've been beating up on bad teams and have not really gotten a chance to gel fully as a healthy team. Coming out of that game on Tuesday, where's your pulse at with this Wildcats group?
So that's kind of been the problem that I've been trying to address on the show, is that the computer models still seem to love Kentucky as far as what they're doing on both ends of the floor, actually. And after that North Carolina loss, I actually said on the live stream, I was shocked that after losing to UNC at home, it only took Kentucky's projected record down by a game after losing to UNC. It just does not make a whole lot of sense to me why the computer models are still hanging on to the Cats, because I understand that they have dominated poor competition, but still you should be able to, even computer models should be able to look at, okay, they have not been able to even really compete with quality competition in a variety of really important statistics. It doesn't really spell a whole lot of positive things for here on out for Kentucky. Maybe, and I'm saying this kind of tongue-in-cheek here, maybe the computer models know that Kentucky's without 3 of their most vital players right now in the point guard that kind of makes everything go, and Jalen Lowe, the rim protector that is one of the best defenders in the country. I think you could argue, at least he certainly was a season ago before his injury. And then Mo Dioubate, who brings physicality that nobody else on this roster really has outside of JQ. And again, we've not seen him suit up yet. So maybe the computer models are saying, okay, well, not all is lost for Kentucky yet, because we still haven't seen the full picture. But yeah, you mentioned this team is really struggling to gel, struggling to build chemistry. Pope has kind of hinted at maybe some issues that the team is having as far as chemistry goes. At least he hinted about it after the Louisville game. Not quite sure what he was trying to get out there, and he's kind of made fun of the media ever since for his comments about it. But I'm not saying that there are locker room issues. I'm just saying the team does not seem to be playing well with each other right now. And more than anything, Andy, we talked about this a little bit before we started recording. The energy, the drive for this team is just not there at all. In the close games a season ago, one of them being Gonzaga, whenever Kentucky would get down, the reason they clawed their way back into it is because of effort, is because of want to, and a desire to win. And right now, this team just doesn't really seem to care about doing the little things to win. So that's kind of my read, is that the computer models, they're saying one thing. My eyes are saying a different thing. This Kentucky team in its current state is a bad team. They're not doing the little things to win. And until they get healthy and until Mark Pope can convince these guys to go out there and try, I don't really see anything changing for the time being.
Yeah, Gonzaga had a 16-point halftime lead in this game last year, and that Kentucky team, as you said, fought all the way back, forced overtime, won in overtime. It's hard to imagine this version of Kentucky. They have the talent to be able to do that, but I agree with you. It doesn't look like they would be able. It looks like they would roll over if they were down by 16 points at halftime. And Gonzaga has had no effort issues outside of the Michigan game, and like there's a lot of things about that game that just did not go well for Gonzaga. I don't think effort was the entire issue. I think they were just gassed and ran into an absolute freight train in the Wolverines. But I do think that feels like it's going to be a big part of this matchup on Friday. But obviously, I think the biggest like X's and O's thing that we're going to be talking about is the front court. You're talking about a Kentucky front court that's missing two key players, one who hasn't been there all year, so you don't really know exactly what you're missing in Quaintance right now, but you know that you're not going to have Dioubate in this game, and you're going to be relying pretty heavily on Malachi Moreno, a true freshman, an absolute beast of a human being, 7 foot 250. He looks every single bit of that size when I watch him on the floor. And he's been an exceptional defensive player. But the problem is you don't have to just guard one Gonzaga front court player. You have to guard two in Graham Ike and Braden Huff. And of course, there's still Brandon Garrison in the mix, and he's a big player. And they have Yelovich, although he's not as much he doesn't play as much like a big despite his size. But I wonder how you expect or think Kentucky will try to handle Gonzaga's front court duo of Ike and Huff, and kind of how that matchup's going to potentially play out on Friday.
So I'm going to tell you first how I'd like for Mark Pope to handle it. I want to be clear here. I've never coached Division I basketball. I've never coached in the SEC. But the consensus right now seems to be that Mark Pope is not running his rotations correctly, and he's subbing in at the wrong time. Times he's playing the wrong players too much. One of the players that I think he's played too much, that every time he has stepped on the court has found a way in meaningful action to harm Kentucky. And I'm sure he's a great individual. I can't speak to who he is as a person, but his play so far this season, Brandon Garrison, has been terrible. Yeah. He has been really bad.
He's the only three for the team against North Carolina.
And you know what? The first and the last, it was the only thing that he brought to the table. But he had two turnovers in key moments. He missed a wide open layup in that game. He also missed a couple against Michigan State as well. He's not going for rebounds. He's not playing with efforts. Just another problem on the team as far as effort and energy goes. Garrison has been, I don't want to say completely unplayable, because former McDonald's All-American, he does have, I think, high upside, but you get the volatility, a lot of inconsistency a season ago. You wanted more consistency this year, and he has just been completely flat. So played 9 minutes against North Carolina. It's not the reason Kentucky lost, but it was, I think, a portion of why they lost, because every time he was out on the floor, something seemed to go wrong with what Kentucky was doing. I would not really play him much, if at all, in this game. If I had to, if I could help it, I would play Andrea Yelovich, who I am shocked at how well he defended Caleb Wilson. I mean, I just did not think he had the tools to body Caleb up like that as consistently as he did in that game. Caleb, by the way, 5 of 19 shooting in that one. Cats found a way to hold him down. But Yelovich, I would play against Huff. And then Moreno, I would play every single second if he wasn't in foul trouble. Moreno, like you mentioned, has been extremely efficient. The one thing that I've gotten right this offseason about this Kentucky team, it's the only thing I've gotten right, is that Malachi Moreno is a very high floor player that's going to give you production night in and night out. Now, it may not be superstar level, but at least he's a presence that you can feel comfortable in on this team. He's rebounding well. He's shooting well at the rim, really good in pick and roll situations, something that Kentucky didn't run a ton of a season ago. They're trying to incorporate a little bit more now. He has been phenomenal. And so I would play him, see if he can hold Ike at various spots, see if Yelovich can hold Huff. I don't necessarily know if they're going to be able to consistently, just because of how impactful those guys are around the rim, but that's the way I would do it. The way that Pope's probably going to do it, he's probably going to play Garrison 15 minutes, and I'm going to be pulling my hair out over the course of the game. But that's my expectation, is for the front court to be like, I'm excited about Yelovich, I'm excited about Moreno, but I just don't know. I don't know if they're going to be able to hold things down. So I want to switch here, Andy, to the Gonzaga side of things, kind of talk a little bit more about this front court, kind of talk about how Gonzaga has played. You mentioned 2 big-time wins already this season, 1 loss against Michigan, who is kind of steamrolling everybody at this point. Kind of ask you about how you feel about the Zags heading into this one, and then later on we'll get into predictions right here on this crossover edition of Locked On Zags and Locked On Kentucky. But first, I want to tell you guys about our friends over at FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. And with FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. If you actually want to go over to FanDuel right now, I believe Andy and I were talking about this before the game started. Line is at 3.5 for this Gonzaga-Kentucky game. If you're a loyal Kentucky fan, you might want to go hammer something on Big Blue Nation. But if you're me and you're really skeptical about how this is going, maybe you swing something in Gonzaga's direction in this one. They've got live spreads. They've got money lines that adjust instantly. They've got player props that update as guys heat up. You can bet next on touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. Keeps you locked in on every single snap, every single play, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, FanDuel.com is here for you. You can place your first NFL live bets all season long. With FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Doer, folks. The holidays are here, and this year I'm not stressing about what to wear because I'll be wearing my Doers. These are easily the most comfortable jeans that I own, and they look good too. Doer's denim and lifestyle apparel is engineered for movement and versatility. So whether you're on the go, lounging at home, or going out to a nice dinner party, Doer is the right fit. I just wore my Doers to go see Wicked. I love that they fit like athletic wear, but they also look nice enough to wear on a night out. The fabric is so stretchy, I forget I'm even wearing jeans. Doer invented the original performance denim, and they give us the best of both worlds, combining classic jeans wear style with the kind of comfort and performance you get from athletic wear. It's time for you to experience the comfort of Doer. I know that you'll love these. Pick up a pair for yourself or as an amazing holiday gift. You can find Doer at your local Seattle REI location or shop online at shopdoer.com/lockedonseattle, where you'll get 15% off your first order. That's shopdoer, DUER.com/lockedonseattle for 15% off. Shopdoer.com/lockedonseattle.
All right, continuing along here on this crossover edition of Locked On Zags and Locked On Kentucky. Lance Dawe, Andy Patton hanging out here with you. And we've talked a little bit about how Kentucky may struggle in this game down low. And I do kind of want to go into the front court a little bit more here, Andy, because the thing that I've been impressed with the most with this Gonzaga squad is their experience just across the board, first and foremost, but how impactful those two guys have been down low, just crushing it for the Zags so far this season.
Yeah, you know, it's they didn't start together. They've played together for 3 years now. So you expect, okay, they have a ton of experience together. That shouldn't be surprising, but they were pretty much playing. It was one of them and not the other one for the majority of the first 2 seasons that they were together. Huff would sub in for EK. They both played about 22 minutes together, or 22 minutes per game with a minute or two together. And then last year they started the final 3 games of the season together, and it went wonderfully. And it was a response. They'd already played St. Mary's twice, and St. Mary's had figured out their starting lineup. So they said, let's try something different. Let's start these 2 guys together. They did it against Georgia in the NCAA tournament and blasted them. They did it against Houston in the NCAA tournament and were a 3-point shot away from upsetting that team. And so they kind of planned to come into this year with that starting lineup. And it's worked really, really well. And part of it is because both these guys have dramatically improved as floor spacers. They're able to shoot the outside shot. Their percentages are not great, in part because they both went 0 of 4 against Michigan in that final game that Gonzaga has played. But Graham Ike hit 4 threes against Creighton. He hit 3 of them in the first 2.5 minutes of that game, which was a career high for him. The ability to space the floor, they're just really good passers. They play off of each other really well. And what Gonzaga is able to do, and again, I think it's going to come into play in this matchup, is if most teams don't have 2 great rim protectors. It's basically one of the only teams I know of that does is Michigan. And that's what happened in that game, is they had so many guys who could protect the paint. But like, if Kentucky was fully healthy and Moreno and Quaintance were playing together, that might be an issue. But without JQ, Moreno's a good shot blocker. If he's guarding EK, what I think Gonzaga will do is they'll have EK play kind of the more traditional power forward role and try to pull Moreno away from the rim and let Huff go down on the block and operate against Yelovich or operate against Braden Garrison, whoever it is. And even if Huff's not super effective, like if Yelovich plays good defense like he did against Caleb Wilson, Gonzaga will have opened up the driving lanes because Moreno will be away from the rim, or Kentucky will leave Graham Ike open. And for Gonzaga fans, they will hope that he can knock those shots down like he did in the Creighton game, because that completely flipped the script. Greg McDermott basically had to go back to the drawing board before the first media timeout because that completely flipped what they were expecting to do. So I think that this front court, and then I think the unique thing about Gonzaga's front court outside of that is their backup, their third big, is Jalen Warley, who played point guard at Florida State effectively and is now playing the backup power forward role for Gonzaga. He will, when he subs in, it will be for either EK or Huff every single time. He is clearly the team's power forward offensively, but defensively, he's guarding guards. Like he was guarding Nigel Pack in the game against Oklahoma. Like he was guarding Mo Odom, who's 5'11" at Arizona State. Like he is so versatile in what he brings to this team. And he's a massive X factor in this game, where I think he's going to be tasked with potentially guarding like Aberdeen or Oweh on the perimeter, while also kind of, gobbling up offensive rebounds and being a pest on that side of the floor as well. It's a really unique front court dynamic for Gonzaga, and one that I think Mark Few is still kind of tinkering with how exactly to make it work. But when it's on, it's pretty much unstoppable. And we've seen that in many of their games so far this year.
Yeah, you mentioned how this two big lineup can kind of open up driving lanes for a lot of different players on this team. You see across the board about 500,000 players on this team shooting over 60% from inside the arc, which is super awesome for me to see just emotionally heading into this game. But I do want to talk about just stylistically. I mean, Mark Few has kind of been known to kind of dominate inside the arc over the course of his time with the Zags. Is that kind of where we're looking heading into this game? Is that we're not going to see a ton from beyond the arc? It's all, the action's going to all be happening either in that paint area or around the rim, regardless of who's touching the ball?
I hope so. And because Gonzaga is not a good 3-point shooting team. They have had like one good 3-point shooting game this year, and it was against a Maryland team that frankly just did not look very good in that Players Era Festival. What I noticed about Kentucky is they have done a very good job against the perimeter this year. But again, some of that is quality of opponent, like Michigan State shot 50% from three against them in that game. And Louisville shot 43s. They didn't shoot super well, but they still made, I think, 13 of them. Yep. So I'm curious how that plays in this game. But Gonzaga has had a tendency, mostly the last couple of years, we haven't seen it as much this year, to shoot more threes than they want. And Mark Few always says that offense is about what the defense gives you. Well, if I'm Mark Pope, I'm giving Gonzaga open threes. I am packing the paint. I am doing everything I can to make sure that Graham and Braden don't get a bunch of paint touches. And if that means Gonzaga settling for threes, you accept it. Because if Gonzaga beats you by shooting 50% from three, I think you just tip your hat, because they have not done that this year. They shot 3 of 22 against Michigan. This is not a particularly good 3-point shooting team. And they have shooters. Steele Venters, I mean, that's what he's on this roster to do. Adam Miller, they got him from Arizona State to do that exactly as well. And both those guys, Venters shot well in the first two games of the Players Era Festival. Miller's like 30% on the year. Like they haven't been consistent. And so I think that Kentucky's going to try to make Gonzaga shoot a lot of threes. And I'm hopeful that Gonzaga will not fall for that bait and shoot a bunch of threes, because I don't think they're good enough to do it. And I think that that is the easiest recipe for Kentucky being able to win this basketball game, is by having Gonzaga go 9 of 30 from three or something like that, when in reality, they probably shouldn't be taking more than 20, not even 15 necessarily, if they really want to win this game and just pound it down low.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, last season, one of the things that kind of let Kentucky get back into that Gonzaga game is the fact that Gonzaga couldn't hit anything from beyond the arc in the second half. They hit like 2 threes over the course of that stretch. I mean, the game is over. Like Gonzaga is taking that one, despite Kentucky's best effort to try and come back. So I'm hoping that we do actually see something similar. Again, by the way, the Bulldogs 6 of 27. In that game with Hickman and Battle combining to go 2 for 12. I mean, that is just not what you want to see from Gonzaga. You want to see them attack the paint as aggressively as possible. Kind of walk me through here, Andy. What on earth happened against Michigan? I did not get to see a minute of that game. I'm kind of glad I didn't. Is there anything, I guess my question on top of that, is there anything so far, either in that Michigan game or that Gonzaga game, that the Bulldog, or excuse me, that Michigan game or the Alabama game or the Oklahoma game, is there anything that you've seen from the Bulldogs that has maybe concerned you that Kentucky could exploit? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, I think the three-point shooting is their biggest weakness, but since we've already touched on that a little bit, I will say the Michigan game is kind of one of those games that I think you just sort of toss out. And
Sure.
honestly, I actually just heard an interview with Mark Pope kind of previewing this game, and he said the same thing. He's like, I'm sure Coach Few has poured over that tape, but I'm not sure there's much you can actually get from it. I think they were just gassed. And again, Michigan, it's not a justifiable excuse because Michigan had also played 2 games in 2 days. But I do think that's kind of what happened. I think for Gonzaga, the three-point shooting is probably the biggest concern. They don't have any rim protection at all. Like their fourth string big, Ismaila Diani, is their best rim protector by a landslide. And there's a pretty good chance he does not play in this game, or if he does, it'll only be because of foul trouble for the other bigs, which is also an issue that Gonzaga sometimes run into. Graham Ike he's not a great defender. He has improved in that space, but he can get a little handsy and he can put himself on the bench early. And that is, Braden Huff's a great player, but if he's your focal point and there's not a yin and yang in that front court offensively, it's a little bit more difficult for him. And that's what happened in the Michigan game. Is Ike was just a non-factor. He scored 1 point and was on a technical free throw. That's it. And Huff scored 14, but he wasn't very efficient. And so I think for Gonzaga, they can get a little bit over-reliant on needing those paint touches and needing Graham to go to work, especially when the three-point shot is not falling. And then defensively, the way that they have kind of mitigated the lack of rim protection is by just having so much ball pressure that they're really preventing guards from getting downhill. And that has worked against 6-foot guards like Mo Odom and Nigel Pack and players like that. And it hasn't, I'm not sure if it will work as well against somebody like Otega Oweh or Denzel Aberdeen, who are bigger and more physical. Again, Jalen Warley's 6'7", like he is big enough to be able to handle Oweh and Aberdeen the way that, Mario St. Superi or, like last year, Ryan Nembhard or Nolan Hickman, they just couldn't do anything against somebody that big. So I think Gonzaga has the tools to keep those guys in front of them. But again, they beat Alabama despite the fact that LeBaron Philon scored 30. Like bigger, physical, and Philon's not as big as those guys. Like guards who can get downhill are going to be able to score on Gonzaga. I think Gonzaga is going to just try to outscore teams that can do that, and that's going to be the strategy here against Kentucky. But there are some areas that Gonzaga can be exploited, and defensively, while they have been very good, I think bigger guards who love to get downhill is a potential weak spot, and we haven't seen a ton of them, and yet that is something that I think Kentucky can exploit.
Yeah, I am hoping, because to be honest with you, it was kind of what we were expecting in that I was expecting in that North Carolina game, is to see if Kentucky could get downhill and finish effectively at the rim, specifically from somebody like Otega Oweh. I was like, he is the most important player in this matchup. See if he can get downhill and finish more efficiently than he has so far this season, because he's not been playing very well. We got to see some of that from him. We got to see some of that from Chandler. I'm hoping that we get to see the Wildcats maybe exude some patience as well in this matchup. But I can only imagine it's probably going to be a little bit more difficult, because I trust Gonzaga's front court presences more defensively, I guess I should say, comparatively to UNC, but we'll just have to see.
Well, this series has provided some thrilling results already. It's a 2-1 advantage for Gonzaga, but 1-0 for Mark Pope. What does this year's game mean for both teams? We're going to talk about that, and we're going to give you our predictions on how we think this thing's going to go down Friday night. All that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, the holidays are here, which means gift hunting season is on. And if you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Aura Frames is the gift that delivers every single time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories. Because Aura isn't just your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. There's no apps you need to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. It is the perfect gift for new grandparents who want to see tons and tons of pictures of their grandkids. Plus, you can add a personalized message right inside the frame so the gift feels thoughtful the moment that it is opened. For a limited time, save on a perfect gift by visiting auraframes.com to get $35 off Aura's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter. You can use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code COLLEGE. This deal is exclusive to listeners and frames sell out fast, so order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. Well, folks, still here. Andy Patton, Locked On Zags, Lance Dawe, Locked On Kentucky, crossing it up here before Friday's matchup between these two programs, the fourth in a 6-year series that was agreed to between Coach Few and then Kentucky coach John Calipari before the 2022-23 season. And we've already seen some really exciting matchups. 2 years ago, Gonzaga beat Kentucky in Rupp, and that was pretty much how Gonzaga cemented their spot in the NCAA tournament. Their resume was not great. That's the only time that these two teams have played each other where one of the teams was not ranked in the top 25. Gonzaga was unranked at the time. They picked up that win, kind of carried that momentum into a spot in the big dance. Last year, obviously, we talked about it already. Gonzaga 18-point second half lead erased by Kentucky, a dramatic overtime win for the Cats. And I think that really helped give Mark Pope a lot of goodwill that I think has carried over for most of the time that he's been the head coach. I think it's starting to fade a little bit right now. At least that's the pulse that I'm getting, but certainly a big time win for the program at the time. Obviously, Pope already has extensive history. He's beat Gonzaga more than most coaches in college basketball from his time at BYU as well. And Lance, with both these teams coming off losses, with both these teams, kind of wanting to reestablish themselves as premier programs in college basketball, needing to pick up a big time win, it feels like this game carries a lot of weight for both programs, more than I think you're typically used to seeing from a non-conference matchup.
Absolutely. I mean, you look at Gonzaga's resume so far. They have already picked up a couple of, actually, I wouldn't say a couple, I would say 5, like wins that are respectable against actual opponents with a pulse: Oklahoma, Creighton, Arizona State, Alabama, Maryland. For Kentucky, I think we mentioned, I don't know if we mentioned this before we started recording or not, but they haven't beaten anybody, Paul. They have gone out and bludgeoned competition that literally anybody with a pulse would, but against actual teams: Louisville, Michigan State, North Carolina on Tuesday. They have just decided, I think, in the most important parts of the game, to not play. They have just sort of given up, taken a step back. And I'm not sitting here saying that, Kentucky deserved to win all 3 of those games. Absolutely not. I mean, they both simultaneously, I think, played their way out of it while also getting beaten by some really, really good teams. Credit to them. But we have not seen this Kentucky team yet put it together mentally and go out there and show it physically. Which has just been the most frustrating thing for me to watch, is that I think this team has so much potential, and yet they just still haven't shown it. And here we are now, like you mentioned, this game carries a lot of weight, I think, for both of these schools. For Gonzaga, it's an opportunity to pick up what will hopefully at the end of the season be a quad 1 win. Right now, I don't know. But for Kentucky, it's an opportunity to prove you do actually have a pulse. You do actually have the ability to be a quality team. I understand that exhibition games don't necessarily mean a whole lot, but what the hell have you been doing since you beat Purdue in Rupp Arena a few weeks ago? I mean, where has that energy, where have those vibes been? The Wildcats have to come into Nashville and they have to play with some intensity and some want to on both ends of the floor. And for this to be as stressful of a spot, I can imagine, for Pope, and then obviously for Gonzaga as well, trying to rebound after whatever that Michigan game was. This is going to be, I think, a high stress environment for sure. I'm excited to be there. Actually, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, it's going to be a great environment, I think. And for Gonzaga, it's sort of Kentucky has so many opportunities still to come because they're in the SEC and they're going to get, quad 1 after quad 1 after quad 1 game. Gonzaga, they're running out. That's the challenge for Gonzaga in what is their final season in the West Coast Conference. Right now, if the net rankings were to not move, Gonzaga has 4 more quad 1 opportunities, and that's the game against Kentucky. That is both games against St. Mary's, and that's the road game against Santa Clara. That is it.
Shout out to UCLA and Oregon for being absolute dog water this year, because that is the reason that those two games coming up are not. I mean, I think Oregon's a quad 3 game right now and nowhere close to being quad 2 or quad 1. And UCLA, maybe it gets back to being a quad 1, but I'm not super confident in the Bruins either. So this is kind of what happened to Gonzaga, was their resume sort of fell apart because the teams that they played didn't do as well as expected. Shout out Baylor again. You beat them by 38 points. And it turns out Baylor was just bad last year. And so for Gonzaga, like, I think they're pretty secure with the Alabama win, but even the Creighton win already doesn't look great, as Creighton has really struggled. I think they'll figure it out, but it's like, those are the kind of things that Gonzaga wants to avoid, and they're outside of their control. So Kentucky feels like a game that probably is going to be quad 1. Like you said, it maybe not, but that would be a worst case scenario for the Cats. You got to win this one because you just don't get many more of those opportunities to do so. Lance, I want to talk before predictions quickly, X factors for this game. For me, for the one player we haven't really talked about yet that I think is a major X factor for Gonzaga is Tyon Grant-Foster. Obviously, the huge storyline for him was waiting for the NCAA to grant him eligibility for another year. Finally had to go the law route in order to get it done right before the season started. And he has been very, very good for Gonzaga. Still a little bit inconsistent because he really didn't have any time to even learn the offense and what is kind of asked of him in this system. I think even after the Alabama game, when he had like 14 points in a major win, Mark Few said that he took a bunch of, quote, moronic shots, which is just my favorite Mark Few quote, because they're still trying to figure out his role. But he's 6'7", he's a free throw merchant, he's great at getting to the line. I think he's going to be a major, major factor. He's also great defensively. He will never get enough credit for how good he is defensively. Averages 1.5 steals, 1.5 blocks per game, gets out in transition well. I think he's going to be a huge X factor for Gonzaga in this game. I'm curious who you think that might be on the Wildcat side.
If he plays, we don't know. But if he plays, it will be Jalen Lowe. Because he is going to make this offense at the very least look semi-competent. He's going to be able to create opportunities for others. He's going to be able to drive into the paint, dish, or finish at the rim. He's going to be able to drive and kick, and hopefully Kentucky can knock a shot down. Couldn't do it against North Carolina, but maybe they can do it here in Nashville. If he plays, it will be Jalen Lowe, who turns everything around for Kentucky offensively. If he does not play, I'm going to go with Cam Williams. I think Cam Williams could be a huge X factor in this game because of what he brings size-wise and athletically, and then also in terms of energy and want to that we've seen from him, albeit against some bad competition at a couple of different points, most notably against Loyola Maryland, where he was skying in for all different kinds of boards. He had 4 assists and 13 points to go along with those 9 rebounds that he had against Loyola Maryland. He has shown some energy, some fight, some want to. If he can get going on both ends of the floor as a physically a solid matchup, and then somebody who I think can stress you inside and outside the arc, he would be my X factor here, to be somebody that is maybe not as well known in this rotation, but I think has the size and the capability to maybe turn this game around if things do get out of hand for the Wildcats.
Let's make our predictions here to close out the show. As you alluded to earlier, the FanDuel line as we're recording this right now is Gonzaga by 3.5, which again, it's not a road game for Gonzaga, but it's certainly not expected to be a particularly friendly environment. So I was a little surprised at that line, but I also am going to pick Gonzaga to not only win this game, but actually to cover that line. I think it's going to be a relatively close game. I would expect to me, it feels like a game where Gonzaga has like a 8 to 10 point lead throughout. Occasionally they push it to 12. Occasionally it gets down to like 6. And then it ends up being like 10 points because they're up 6 and they, hit 5 free throws in the final minute and win it by 10 or 11. That's kind of my vague baseline prediction for this game, is Zags by like 9 or 10. But it's a game where it's like, well, the final score doesn't look dominant, but Gonzaga was in control for 37 or so of the 40 minutes of this game.
I'm getting real tired of Ken Palm, Andy, because they say that Gonzaga's going to win this game by 1 point.
Okay.
That's what Ken Palm says. Everything that I've seen so far this season, including that Michigan loss, don't care. Throw it out.
Yeah.
Everything that I've seen indicates that Kentucky's going to lose this game. And they're going to lose this game by double digits. They have not shot the ball well. They don't have a point guard who can distribute. They are not showing enough energy against a team that is going to try and beat you to death on the glass in Gonzaga. Every matchup-wise, stats wise, everything that I'm looking at heading into this game is saying Kentucky is going to lose and it's going to be bad. And yet, for some reason, the computer models think that Kentucky has a chance. For some reason, Vegas has this as a 3.5 point game. I don't quite understand it. I don't know where they're coming from. And I know a lot of my listeners aren't going to like this. The reality is right now, Kentucky is not playing good basketball. They are injured. They do not have two of the biggest, most important pieces on this roster. And they're heading into a game against a really good team that's trying to rebound out of a bad loss that matches up well with you on paper. Yeah. I'm going to take Gonzaga to win. I'm going to take Gonzaga to cover. And I want Kentucky to prove me wrong. I'm praying that they prove me wrong. But as of right now, nothing has given me confidence heading into this one saying Kentucky is going to win the game. If they are going to win the game, I'll say this real quick. If they do find a way to win, it is because guys like Oweh play with patience. Jalen Lowe does appear in this game, and it opens up the floor for some of Kentucky's shooters. They're actually, lo and behold, able to knock down some outside shots. That would be incredible. They don't get bludgeoned on the glass, I should say. Braden Huff doesn't have the most efficient game. Graham Ike doesn't drop 28 like he did a season ago. They do pack the paint. Kentucky's going to have to do all those little things. They're going to have to show up with energy and effort. But again, just haven't seen it. So why should I expect it?
Well, folks, that's going to wrap it up for us today here, our final show before this epic showdown. I'm going to be going live after the game. I'm projecting that Lance will go live after the game, or at least very shortly, because you are going to be in the house at that game. So either way, all you Gonzaga and Kentucky fans will get a chance to hear our thoughts after that game is over. Going to be an absolute blast of a game, Lance. I cannot wait. Thanks for hopping on. Appreciate getting a chance to do this crossover. We will both talk to you all later. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your day and look forward to a really fun game on Friday night.